The village of Darnwick sat at the edge of the mist-fen forest, where the fog lingered even in high summer, and stories were told in whispers, not songs. The people here feared what they did not know, and there was a great deal they did not know. They feared the depths of the woods, the eyes in the dark, the name of the first circle said aloud on stormy nights. And they feared Orin just a little. He was 15 and lean, with the look of someone born to wander. His mother, Mira, was the village healer, a woman who spoke to plants and always knew when someone was lying. Orin was quieter than her, more watchful. He had a habit of staring into flames as if they might speak back, and sometimes the wind changed direction when he walked past. Once, when he was 7, he wished for a candle to light on his birthday, and it had. No flint, no spark. Just fire, sudden and soft, blooming at the wick like it had been waiting. His mother had smiled with her eyes and said nothing. But that night she'd gone out to the trees and whispered into the dark. He had always known he was different. He just hadn't known why. The day the letter came began like any other damp mist. Chickens screeching, his mother muttering over crushed herbs. Orin sat on a low stool grinding root bark into paste when the air shifted. Not the wind, something older. Like a memory brushing past skin. There was a sound at the window, a soft thump. Orin turned. A letter lay on the sill. No bird, no courier, no footsteps in the muddy path. Just the letter. Sealed with green wax bearing the mark of the Arcanum, an eye crowned in roots and flame. It pulsed faintly with light. Orin touched it. The parchment felt warm, like sun-soaked stone. He broke the seal and read. To Orin of Darnwick, the Arcanum summons you. You are to arrive before the rise of the next new moon. Bring only what you hold dear. The school of the 7 threads waits. Magic waits for no one. He read it again. Then again. The words didn't change. His heart did. When he showed it to his mother, Mira grew still, not afraid, just quiet, like someone hearing the last notes of a song long forgotten. Mount Caldreth, she said softly. So they finally noticed you. You knew this might happen. She nodded. It's in you, Orin. Like it was in your father. I'd hoped it wouldn't be. But hope and truth often disagree. Orin sat by the hearth that night, the letter clenched in his hand. The fire burned low, casting shadows across the stone walls. His satchel lay nearby, half packed with dried fruit, a flask, and his father's old journal. More sketches than words, drawings of stars and strange glyphs. He stared at the flames. "What if they made a mistake?" he whispered. "What if I'm not meant for this?" The fire popped, and something on the beam above him clicked. He looked up. A small creature crouched on the wooden beam. At first he thought it was a squirrel, until it unfurled wings like stained glass parchment and blinked with golden eyes. Its fur shimmered with soft bioluminescent light, a glow that pulsed gently in the gloom. Then it spoke. "Took you long enough. I've been waiting up there for hours." Orin stumbled to his feet. What are you?" The creature fluttered down to the table and sat on its haunches. Its tail curled like a scroll and sparked faintly at the tip. "I'm your familiar," it said. Name's Thimble. Squirrel-dragon, Ember lineage, emotional support tier, minor celestial classification, snack enthusiast. Yo talk. Clearly. Orin stared. "I haven't even done magic yet." Thimble tilted his head. "You don't summon familiars, Orin. They arrive when the thread is strong enough to follow. You read the letter." That woke the bond. Orin blinked. "So you're real. You're not a hallucination." "Hallucinations don't smell this nice," Thimble said, fluffing his wings. "Also, I'm housebroken." Orin sat back down slowly. Thimble hopped into his lap. "You're leaving soon," the creature said. "You'll want someone who knows the way. The roads to the Arcanum are trickier than they look." especially for first-time sparkers like you." "I didn't ask for this," Orin said, voice cracking slightly. "No one ever does," said Thimble, more gently now. "But that doesn't mean it's not who you are." They sat in silence for a while, the fire burning low. Orin whispered, "I'm scared." Thimble flicked his tail. "Good. Means you're not stupid." By morning, the village knew. Mira hugged him tightly at the edge of the Mistfen road. She pressed a pendant into his palm. A leaf of ironwood carved with 3 small runes. "Old Thalnoran charm," she said. "It won't save you, but it might help you remember who you are." "Will I see you again?" he asked. She smiled through misty eyes. "You'll see the world. That's better." The villagers watched from a distance. They didn't speak, but Orin could feel something change in the air. A current shifting, like a river starting to flow where once there was only mud. Thimble peeked out of his hood. "Say something dramatic," he whispered. "Like, I leave behind the world I knew to find the flame within." Orin adjusted the satchel on his shoulder. "I'm just walking," he said. "But I know where I'm going?" Thimble blinked. Not bad. Bit understated. Together, they stepped into the misted path. Toward the forests, the shifting roads, and mist drifted low across the path as Orin left Darnwick behind, the scent of morning dew mixing with distant wood smoke and wildflowers. Each step carried the weight of something ancient, as if the earth itself remembered the moment a thread of fate was pulled tight. Thimble rode in his hood, purring faintly. "Good pace," he said between tail twitches. "Steady, intentional, only slightly bumbling." "I'm just walking." "You're walking into the lee-woven corridors of ancient magical sovereignty. Try to enjoy it." They traveled eastward into the Veltha wilds, a forest that moved with the seasons, literally. Trees shifted places. Paths reappeared in different spots, depending on the moon. The locals in Darnwick never strayed beyond the old cairn for good reason. But Orin wasn't turning back. On the second night he dreamed of flame, not burning or consuming, just gentle, warm. A flame that hummed in his chest like a memory he'd never lived. In the dream, he stood before a towering tree made of silver branches and obsidian leaves. Beneath it, 8 figures stood cloaked in light, faceless but watchful. When he awoke, Thimble was sitting on his chest. "You're leaking soul steam," he said. "Don't be dramatic." "What was that?" Orin whispered. Thimble didn't answer right away. Dreams near old magic mean something. That tree. Sounds like the ashroot, first circle territory. You might want to keep that to yourself at the school. Too many ears. Not enough sense. Orin shivered. "Do you think it's connected to why I was called?" "Everything's connected, Spark. That's the problem." The road grew strange on the 4th day. They passed a stream where the water flowed uphill and sang lullabies in a language Orin didn't know. Butterflies with translucent runes fluttered around his head. At one point, they crossed a meadow where the grass whispered prayers for the dead. "Thalnor's magic is weirder than I thought," Orin muttered. "You're only scratching the surface," said Thimble. "Wait until we hit the glade." "The what?" "You'll see." By the 6th day, Orin's boots were soaked, his legs ached, and even his thoughts were tired. But as dusk painted the sky with streaks of rose and copper, they reached the edge of a clearing unlike any other. "The Wishing Glade," said Thimble, softly now. "One of the old places. Doesn't answer to kings or even the Arcanum. It just is." The glade shimmered. Tall yew trees circled the open space, their branches arching overhead like a cathedral dome. Flowers glowed faintly beneath the grass. The air held stillness, like a breath waiting to be exhaled. "Step carefully," Thimble said. "No lies in here." As Orin walked into the clearing, the world around him slowed. Time stretched. Sounds faded. And then the visions came. First, a boy with copper hair dancing through falling petals. Then an old woman drawing constellations into the soil with a stick. Then a glimpse of his mother, younger, holding a baby. Her eyes were full of tears and wonder. Wishes? Thimble whispered. Echoes. Everyone who passes through leaves something behind. Orin's throat tightened. Can I make one? Only if it's real. You can't fake the glade. He stepped into the center of the clearing and knelt. Closed his eyes. Felt the warm pulse of the earth under his fingers. I want to belong, he said. Not shouted, not whispered, just spoken. A soft breeze stirred. The vision rose like a morning fog. He saw himself, older, stronger, robed in crimson and gold, speaking calmly to a group of younger students gathered around him. Behind him, the towers of the Arcanum shimmered, and Thimble perched beside his shoulder, still glowing, still snarky, still with him. Then it faded. You passed, said Thimble. Barely. Orin smiled. They camped at the glade's edge that night. Thimble curled beside him on a bed of moss. You did good, he said. Most people ask for power. You asked for place. That's rarer. Orin stared up at the stars, their constellations unfamiliar now, as if the sky had shifted. Is it really as great as they say? The Arcanum. Thimble opened one glowing eye. Depends. Great at what? Teaching. Testing. Changing people. All of it. Thimble shrugged. It's the brightest forge in Thalnor. But forges don't choose what you become. They just show you what melts and what endures. The next morning brought rain and clarity. They passed ruins swallowed by ivy, stone circles etched with runes older than kingdoms, a grove of trees where the wind always blew backward, and a crumbling statue of a hooded figure reaching toward the sky, its hand worn smooth by time. At its base, a line of text carved in ancient tongue, "Those who burn true shall not burn out." Orin stared at it for a long time. "Do you think that's about the Emberglass?" he asked. Thimble snorted. "Everything's about the Emberglass if you ask the right bard, or the wrong librarian." By dusk on the 8th day, the sky turned gold, and there, looming through the veil of rain and rising mist, was Mount Caldrith. The Arcanum spiraled around its cliffs like a crown of ever-changing stone. Towers bent toward the stars. Floating gardens rotated in slow, perfect arcs. Bridges carved from moonlight drifted from spire to spire. A waterfall of flame tumbled upward into nothing. Orin's breath caught. "Welcome," said Thimble, voice reverent for once, "to the place where Thalnor sends its seekers." A single gate awaited them, circular, made of silver roots and flowering vines. It shimmered with inner light. As Orin stepped forward, a voice echoed, not aloud, but in his heart. "What do you bring that no one else can?" He paused. "I don't know," he said. "But I'm here to find it." The gate opened. The gate closed behind him with the sound of rustling leaves and a soft exhale, as if the mountain itself had acknowledged Orin's answer. He stood within the courtyard of threads, the central heart of the Arcanum. Beneath his boots, the ground shimmered with intricate symbols etched into smooth stone, runes of old Thanoran weaving and celestial patterns that pulsed faintly beneath the surface. Above, towers bent gently toward the courtyard, like trees in wind, their shapes never quite still. "It's alive," Orin whispered. "Not quite," Thimble said from his shoulder, "but close." The Arcanum listens. The stone remembers. Students filled the space, arriving from all corners of Thalnor. Some dismounted from griffins or disembarked shimmering airships. Others stepped out of swirling portals, their robes already lined with sigils. One elf carried a staff made of crystal vines. A dwarven girl whispered to the flames, circling her hands. Orin felt like a child with dirt on his face and too many questions in his eyes. Thimble noticed. "It's okay to feel small here," he murmured. "Just don't stay that way." A bell rang, no, sang from above. It didn't chime so much as ripple through the bones, a chorus of voices woven into tone. A figure appeared on the central platform. She wore a robe of storm, dark green and silver braid, her eyes bright as torchlight. "Welcome," she said, her voice carrying without effort. "I am Professor Selwyn, Warden of Initiates. You stand at the threshold of one of the last great sanctuaries of magic in Thalnor. The Arcanum does not teach spells, it teaches truth. You do not come here to learn magic. You come here to remember it." Murmurs passed through the crowd. "Tonight you will find your dorms. Tomorrow your threads begin." She stepped aside. The ground itself responded. Stone paths unfurled like scrolls in 4 directions. A soft hum filled the air as the students began to follow them, splitting into groups as if guided by instinct. Orin hesitated. Then the stone beneath his feet glowed red-orange, like fire under glass. "Looks like we're headed to the Ember Path." Thimble noted. "That's a good sign. Might even mean you've got a knack for flam-casting or emotional channeling." "Is that good?" "Depends. Got any deep-rooted trauma or buried feelings?" "Maybe." "Perfect." The dormitories were carved into the side of Mount Caldrith itself. Orin's room was small but warm, with a window that looked out over the cloud-wrapped valleys of eastern Thalnor. A candle floated gently in the air beside the bed, and when he whispered, "Tuesday," the mattress responded with comforting warmth. He sat on the edge of the bed, overwhelmed. He had made it. But he didn't feel like he belonged. Not yet. Thimble curled in his lap. "Want to leave?" Orin hesitated. "No, I didn't expect it to feel this big." Thimble's eyes glowed. "That's because it is. Magic isn't just fireballs and floating books. It's memory, identity. The Arcanum's halls are built from the bones of forgotten gods and songs of old. You're not just learning. You're stepping into something that remembers." Orin looked out the window. Distant lightning danced along the horizon. "I don't want to fail." "You won't," Thimble said, curling tighter. "You're already here. That's the first spell." Morning at the Arcanum was anything but ordinary. The tower bell sang again, and Orin followed the flow of students through shifting corridors that changed with the hour. Staircases rearranged themselves. Hallways widened or shrank based on mood or magical pressure. One wall sprouted vines that parted only for those who said, "Please," in the old tongue. The first lesson of the day was magical resonance, and the self taught by a bald man with inked runes spiraling down both arms. Professor Camlin. He held up a flame in his hand. "This," he said, "is not fire. This is fear. My fear, shaped into heat." He extinguished it with a breath. "Magic is not made. It is channeled. Your soul shapes what your hand delivers." Orin's first attempt resulted in a flicker of light and a puff of smoke that startled even him. Others conjured orbs, blades, illusions. Thimble, perched in the rafters, whistled. "You've got potential. Emphasis on potent. Less on tile." Later, in the dining hall, Orin found himself alone, until a girl in a leather half-robe sat across from him. She had mismatched gloves, and one eye sparkled with a faint arcane glow. "You're the boy with the glow, squirrel," she said. Thimble waved smugly from Orin's shoulder. "Name's Nima," she added. "You look like someone who's pretending not to be terrified." "I'm Orin." "Nice to meet you, Orin. Let's be friends. You look like the sort who needs one." And just like that, something eased in his chest. That evening, Orin wandered the halls after curfew. The Arcanum was even stranger at night, walls breathing softly, mirrors rippling like water, paintings whispering half-forgotten names. He paused at a locked door with no keyhole. Above it, etched in gold, the threads remember. Thimble whispered, "That's not meant to open until you're ready." Ready for what? For what's really waiting. The Arcanum taught in layers. Like an ancient tree, every ring a cycle, every cycle a revelation. Students did not learn in rows but in rotations, pulled through living lessons that adjusted to their aptitude, their intention, and sometimes their dreams. It was in his second week that Orin was summoned to the threading hall. He entered through an archway woven from silver roots and glowing vines. Inside, 8 glowing strands hung in mid-air, each pulsing with soft, rhythmic energy. They were not threads of silk or string, but woven lines of essence, magical domains passed down since the time of the first circle. Professor Selwyn stood beside the strands, her expression as unreadable as ever. "The threads," she said, "are not chosen. They reveal. Each of you will place your hand within the loom and listen. If you try to control it, it will reject you. If you lie, it will vanish. But if you listen, truly listen, it will bind." Students stepped forward one by one. Some touched the thread of stone, and runes flared on their palms. Others reached towards storm glass or blood. The hall shimmered with quiet awe. Orin approached slowly. His chest thudded with doubt. Thimble whispered from the collar of his robe, "Just breathe. You don't pick the fire. You just let it remember you." Orin raised his hand. The moment his fingers touched the loom, the world fell away. He stood in a memory, not his own. A battlefield beneath a burning sky. Voices cried out in ancient Thalnoran. A boy, no older than himself, clutched a blade of flame, tears streaking through suit. Then his mother Mira, kneeling in the garden, speaking to someone unseen. Then himself, seated before a massive tree woven with fire, a shadow of 8 figures watching from the roots. When he opened his eyes, one thread hovered before him, the thread of ember, not flame, not destruction. Emotion. The kind of magic that burns because it feels. It drifted into his chest like a spark returning to its hearth. Professor Selwyn nodded once. "Uncommon," she said quietly. "Difficult, but true." The next few days tested everything he thought he knew about himself. In the Hall of Flamecasting, he was asked to conjure warmth, not with will, but with memory. Orin thought of home, of his mother's arms, of the morning mist in Darnwick. A soft flame rose from his finger-tips, not searing, but radiant. In threadwork theory, he wrote essays not with ink, but by channeling emotion into crystal quills. When he wrote about fear, the script came out jagged and black. When he wrote of hope, the runes curved like vines. "I hate this subject," Thimble muttered. "No snacks. Just feelings." "Everything here is feelings. Exactly my point." Other students took notice, not because Orin was the strongest. In truth, he was far from it. His illusions still flickered out like candle stubs. His shielding spells were as thin as morning mist. But something about the way his magic responded, as if it knew him before he acted, made people curious. "Your thread's rare," said Nima one afternoon as they sat beside the campus floating pond. "Most people don't get ember. It's unstable. Tell me something new, but it's powerful. Not flashy, but real?" Orin skipped a stone across the glowing water. "It doesn't feel powerful. It feels like I'm constantly one wrong breath from unraveling." "That's because you're still tying your power to your fear," she said, then paused. "Don't." He looked at her. She smiled. "Tie it to your truth." One night, the ember in his palm pulsed in his sleep. He dreamed again. This time he stood in a chamber deep beneath the Arcanum, stone older than cities, carved with endless spirals. At its center, a mirror. Within it, a flickering version of himself, alone angry, glowing too brightly. He reached out. The reflection recoiled. He whispered, "You are not all I am." The image softened. The light steadied. He awoke with sweat on his brow, and Thimble curled protectively across his chest. In his next lesson, Professor Camlin gestured toward the enchanted chalkboard. "Magic," he said, "does not exist to make you powerful. It exists to make you known. The rest is noise." That afternoon Orin conjured his first true flame globe. It hovered over his hand, flickering gently in shades of amber and blue. He didn't push it. He felt it. And it stayed. That evening, Nima found him at the tower garden, where lantern flowers bloomed in mid-air. "I heard you set Camlin's robe on fire," she said, grinning. "Accidentally," Orin replied. "It was a metaphorical spark, mostly." They laughed. A warmth that wasn't magic passed between them. Thimble fluttered down from a nearby vine. You two bonding over emotional combustion. Classic Ember. Orin walked back to his dorm under a sky of stars he still hadn't learned the names of. He looked at his palm. The ember there glowed faintly, quietly, as if resting. He wasn't the best student. He wasn't the strongest. But he was beginning to understand something more important. He was becoming himself. By the end of his third week at the Arcanum, Orin had learned 3 important truth staircases could, and would, rearrange themselves at the worst possible moments. Thimble had no concept of personal boundaries or library etiquette. The more he listened, not just to lessons, but to himself, the more clearly magic answered. And yet something tugged at him, a sense of being watched. Not with malice, but expectation. He often caught himself staring at doorways with no handles, murals with hidden eyes, or stone spirals that seemed to pulse faintly when he walked past. He felt cold. One night sleep evaded him. Thimble lay curled on the windowsill, softly glowing, snoring in tiny sparks. Orin slipped out of bed, lit a lantern, and stepped barefoot into the corridor. The Arcanum at night was not the same place it was by day. The walls hummed with quiet breath. The torches flickered in colors he'd never seen. As he passed one hallway, a breeze carried the scent of blooming fire lilies and ink. He turned left, then right, then down, and there it was, a doorless archway carved in obsidian and wrapped in ivy that glowed faintly silver. Above it, engraved in old Thalnor, "Weave not what is safe. Weave what is true." His lantern flickered. Thimble stirred awake from 3 floors above. "Ho, ho!" the familiar whispered from his perch in Orin's bag. "You found one of those places?" "What is it?" A weaving room. Orin stepped through. The chamber within was vast and circular, the walls etched with shifting runes that swirled like oil on water. At the center sat a pool, shallow still and glowing faintly blue. Above it hovered a stone loom, its thread made of light slowly spinning as if woven by invisible hands. Orin approached. The air smelled like petrichor and candle wax. Thimble floated to his shoulder. This place responds to memory, emotion, and intent. It shows more than it tells. Shows what? Who you are when no one's watching. Orin knelt by the pool. Its surface rippled. He saw his mother standing at the edge of the mistfen, the ironwood pendant clenched in her hand. He saw himself as a child, trying to light a candle with a whisper. Then an older version of himself, robed in crimson, eyes glowing, walking through fire as others followed behind him. The image flickered. He reached out, and the flame leapt from the vision into his palm. But it didn't burn. It warmed, and something in his chest clicked. A voice spoke from behind him. "I wondered how long it would take you to find this place." Professor Selwyn stood at the arch, arms folded, face unreadable. Orin stood quickly. "I didn't mean to. You were meant to," she said. "The weaving rooms call to certain students. Always have." She walked in and gestured to the loom. "This place predates the Arcanum. Some say the first circle spun it themselves, to teach mortals not how to use magic, but why. Orin looked down at the flame flickering in his palm. It feels like it knows me. It does, Selwyn said, because you're not just learning magic, Orin. You're remembering it, thread by thread. The next morning, everything felt sharper. In class, he didn't second-guess his incantations. His flame-casting flowed more easily. When challenged in spell-form debate by Briar, who had taken to sneering at Orin whenever possible, he answered clearly and without anger. Briar blinked. "Who taught you that counter, Seal? Memory?" Orin said. Thimble, lounging in a pile of scrolls, gave a smug little snort. He returned to the weaving room often, though he never stayed long. Sometimes it showed him memories he didn't recognize. Soldiers in silver, a woman with eyes like stars, a burning city in reverse. When he mentioned them to Selwyn, she merely said, "Threads connect across lifetimes." One evening, the loom spun faster than usual. Orin stood in its glow and felt still. "Why me?" he asked aloud. Thimble didn't answer. Neither did the room. But the flame in his palm flared slightly, and he understood, because he'd asked to belong. And now the world was answering. Back in the library, he dug deeper. Old tomes whispered of the threadbearers, mages who, in the age of fracture, had acted not as wielders, but as weavers of magical truth. Most had vanished. Some were believed to have become one with their threads, walking the edge of divinity and mortality. One name recurred, Sindral Vey, last known wielder of the ember thread before the cataclysm known as the Vilban. Orin whispered it aloud. The room seemed to pulse. "You might want to not say that name where people can hear it," Thimble warned. The Veilburn wasn't just a purge. It was a forgetting. Some truths got too close to the fire. Maybe they deserve remembering. Thimble blinked. "You're dangerous." "Not yet," Orin said. "But maybe soon." By mid-season, the Arcanum began to shift in temperament. The stone hallways hummed with tension. Lessons sharpened. Professors no longer offered answers, only riddles and questions. Threads flickered with unstable resonance. Even the floating gardens seemed to rotate a little faster, casting longer shadows at dusk. It was time for the first trial. The Grove of Mirrors opened only twice a year, and never by command. It appeared one morning outside the East Tower. An entire forest gate, etched in silver bark, surrounded by students whispering and pretending they weren't afraid. Professor Camlin stood before them, his usual playful demeanor subdued. "This is not a duel," he said. "Not a puzzle. Not a battle. The Grove will show you one thing, the fear you carry that you haven't faced. Nothing more. Nothing less." Orin felt a familiar twinge in his chest. Camlin continued, "You will enter in pairs. You will leave together, or not at all." Murmurs spread through the crowd. Some students paled. Nima stepped up beside Orin without hesitation. "Let's get this over with." He gave her a nervous glance. "Sure you want me?" She shrugged. "You've got a glow, squirrel, and a conscience. That's more than most." Thimble puffed out his chest. "I'm not a squirrel. I'm a symbol of resilience and dignity." They were the third pair to step through the trees. The grove was wrong the moment they entered, not just quiet, silent, like even the air was watching. The trees reflected light oddly, bending it in ways that made it hard to tell what was solid and what was shadow. Mirrored bark lined the trunks, warping their reflections into strange, shifting forms. Sometimes Orin looked into a tree and saw Nima, older, broken, alone. Other times he saw himself as a child, shivering in Darnwick, calling out to no one. The grove whispered, not with sound, but emotion, echoes, doubts. "I don't like this," Nima muttered. "Which means it's working," Thimble said from Orin's shoulder. "Brace yourselves." They came to a clearing. A mirrored pool sat at its center. Orin stepped forward. In its surface he saw himself, not as he was, but as he feared to be alone. Cracked with magical scars, wandering ruins, forgotten, unloved, a flame flickering too weak to warm even himself. The illusion Orin looked up and spoke. "They'll forget you," it said. "You're just another village boy pretending to matter." Orin froze. Nima grabbed his hand. "That's not you?" "It could be," he said. "But it isn't," she said fiercely. "Because you don't run from what's hard. You face it. I've seen you." His breath hitched. Then he let go. The pool shivered, then cracked like ice. Now it was Nima's turn. She stepped forward, and in the mirror her father, hard-eyed, dismissive. "You'll never be good enough!" The reflection spat. Always too much or too little. Nima clenched her jaw, but her hand trembled. Orin moved beside her. "Is it true?" she whispered. "Sometimes I believe it is." "But what does your thread believe?" Her fingers flicked open, and light surged around her glove, golden white. The mirror shattered. The grove began to fade. Outside, the watchers murmured as Orin and Nima stepped through the silver trees side by side. They weren't the fastest. They didn't have the most dramatic exit. But they left unbroken together. Camlin gave them a small nod. "Very good." Thimble popped his head out of Orin's collar. "How'd we do on style points?" Camlin actually smiled. Full marks. That evening the dining hall was warmer than usual. Candles burned low. Laughter floated through the arches. Even Briar raised a reluctant goblet when Nima passed. Orin sat at the edge of it all, not unsure, just reflective. Nima joined him with a bowl of mushroom stew. We didn't die. "That's worth celebrating." "I wasn't worried," Orin said. "La. Okay. I was terrified." She clinked her spoon against his. "Same." Later, Orin walked alone to the weaving room. He stood at the loom and let the memory of the grove flow into it. It spun threads of silver and red, fear and resilience. Not balanced, but whole. He whispered, "I'm still here." The ember in his palm answered. It began with a dream. Orin stood in a hall of mirrors, each pane etched with runes older than language. Reflections of himself flickered across them. Some younger, some ancient, some burning from within. At the end of the hall, upon a pedestal of charred stone, hovered a shard of glowing crystal. It pulsed with memory, not light. When he reached out, the mirrors cracked. He awoke breathless, the ember in his palm glowing red-hot. Thimble stirred in the candlelight. "You dreamed of it, didn't you?" "The crystal." Thimble nodded grimly. "The Emberglass?" The next day Orin couldn't focus. Even the floating ink of his spellwork refused to settle, shifting restlessly on the page. During a practical lesson in magical boundaries, he accidentally set a training ward aflame again. Professor Selwyn pulled him aside after class. "You're distracted," she said. I had a dream about a crystal. I think it was the Emberglass." Selwyn's eyes narrowed. "That name is not spoken lightly in these halls." "Why?" "Because it was never meant to survive." She motioned for him to follow. They descended into the vault of unraveled lore. A restricted level beneath the library, sealed with wards that hummed like distant thunder. Thimble clung close, silent for once. Selwyn led him through aisles of chained books and floating parchments until they reached a quiet alcove. There, on a pedestal covered in dust, lay a scroll bound in iron thread. "The Veilburn," she said. "A purge, centuries ago. The Arcanum destroyed dangerous knowledge, things that tore at the fabric of Thalnor. The Emberglass was said to contain memories not only of magic, but of the first circle themselves. Why would anyone want to destroy that? Because some memories are too powerful, too painful. They don't just show you the truth, they burn it into you." She hesitated. Sindrelve, she added quietly, was the last to touch it. Orin froze. I read about them. In the weaving room's texts, Selwyn's gaze sharpened. You remembered them, Orin. That's different. The next night, Orin returned to the weaving room alone. He sat at the loom and whispered, "Show me!" The pool shimmered. This time it didn't show his past or his fears. It showed a memory not his own. A great hall in ruin, ash drifting like snow. A young mage, Sindrelve, clutching the Emberglass, eyes blazing with tears. They screamed as a circle of robed figures turned away. "I won't let you erase this," they cried. Memory is magic. The vision ended in flame. Orin fell to his knees, gasping. Thimble landed beside him. "You're starting to remember things no student should." "I'm not a normal student." "No," Thimble said. "You're a threadbearer, like they." Over the next days, Orin couldn't stop searching. He scoured the library for scraps about the Veilbun. He began tracing forgotten runes on the walls at night. He even asked Nima to help him break into the restricted archive, though she made him swear on Thimble's tail not to do anything reckless. "Why do you care so much?" she asked. "Because there's something buried here," Orin said. "And I think it's connected to my thread, to my magic, to me." She nodded, but her expression was troubled. "Just make sure you're chasing truth, not obsession." That evening, he found a mural hidden behind an old tapestry in the Ember Wing. It showed 8 figures, cloaked, faceless, radiant with different kinds of magic. One held a flame, another a shadow, one wept tears of gold, and one in the center held nothing, just an empty palm. Above them was a cracked circle, and beneath a single word in faded paint, Emberglass. He reached out, and the mural flared with heat. His palm burned. When he pulled back, he saw it, the faint outline of a thread rune forming beneath his skin. Thimble stared. "You're not just following history anymore," he whispered. "You're living it." The next morning, an envelope waited on Orin's pillow. No seal, no sender. Just 5 words scrawled in gold ink. "The Ember trial awaits at dusk." The Arcanum's towers cast long shadows as dusk fell. Orin stood alone in the courtyard of threads, wind curling around his cloak, the letter in his hand like a weightless stone. Students watched from balconies and windows, silent. No one spoke when the Ember trial was called. Not because they didn't care, because they understood. The trial was not a test of skill. It was a reckoning. Professor Selwyn approached, her emerald robes trailing soft sparks across the stones. She looked older tonight, worn. "You've followed threads others were told to forget," she said. "The trial has been waiting for you." Orin nodded. Thimble landed on his shoulder. "This is one of those moments you'll remember for the rest of your life," he said quietly, "unless it kills you. Then it's more of a closing act, helpful as always. Just don't lie to it. The trial burns lies." The stone beneath Orin's feet began to glow, forming a circular platform ringed in ember light. He stepped into it. The world fell away. He stood in a void, not dark but blazing with potential. Threads hung in the air like constellations, woven and unwoven at once. At the center stood a mirror of flame, and within it himself. But not just a reflection. A version of him infused with power. Older, eyes glowing gold, robes marked with runes no professor had taught. "You've come far," the figure said. Orin swallowed. "Are you me?" "I'm the you who might be, if you forget who you are to become what others expect." Then the world around him shifted. Images flickered, memories, futures, might have beens, Darnwick in flames, Nima lying in the snow, broken, Thimble fading into mist, the Emberglass shattering in his hand, power blooming from rage, not truth. "You want strength," the reflection said. "You want to belong. I can give you that. You only have to let go of the fear. I don't want power, Orin said. Then why did you come? I wanted to understand who I was. The flames surged. Then show me, the trial demanded. Suddenly, he stood in the weaving room, but it was cracked, the loom broken, the threads tangled. A voice whispered, You are not enough. He looked down. His hands glowed with fire, but it trembled. He closed his eyes. I am enough, he said. The fire steadied. I'm afraid, he admitted, but I still choose this. The loom began to repair itself. I am not perfect, not the strongest, not the most gifted, the threads lit one by one. But I am Orin. I listen. I feel. I remember. The mirror burst, and he was standing in the void again, alone now, but calm. The ember in his palm glowed brighter than it ever had. Not wild, not chaotic, just true. He opened his eyes to find himself back in the courtyard. Thimble chirped softly. Well, Orin looked up. Professor Selwyn stood before him, eyes shining. You passed. He looked down at his hand. The ember was now a small, steady flame dancing just above his palm, a part of him, not decoration, not weapon memory. Weeks passed. He returned to his studies, but everything had changed. He spoke with clarity. He wove spells with resonance. Others began to seek him out, not as a leader, but as someone who understood. He found Nima by the Mirror Grove one afternoon. "Thought you might be here," she said. "I remembered something," Orin said. "Your past, my purpose." One evening, as the stars over Mount Caldrith shimmered, Orin walked alone to the weaving room. He sat before the loom. No visions came, only silence, and in that silence, peace. The ember flared in his palm, then faded, becoming part of his breath.